Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have more on Sikh Heritage Month in Canada, including how the community has been honoured by British Columbia's Attorney General and positive coverage filling the media. We'll also cover how, true to their faith and culture, Sikhs have taken the vanguard in the global fight for prisoners' rights and human dignity. Meanwhile, in the UK, as Vaisakhi celebrations grip the community, the British Prime Minister pays tribute to British Sikhs, but not quite enough tribute as it turns out. Promises made to issue a formal apology over the Jallianwallagh Bagh massacre are once again promises broken, as the community finds itself once again disappointed by the British government. The only surprise is, why are they surprised? And talking of disappointments, we have the story of a British mum so outraged as a Sikh teacher's Kirpan, she launches a petition to have it banned. Stay tuned to find out just who ends up disappointed in that story. All this and more on today's show. But joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus. I hope all the viewers out there are having a wonderful day as well. We are looking forward to this weekend, the Vaisakhi Parade, the largest one outside of India, coming to Surrey, and we'll be there reporting and get you lots of coverage. Until then, if you are at the Vaisakhi Parade this weekend in Surrey, come up and say hello. I always love to meet people and talk, and just come on up and say hello. Thanks, Angus. Back to you.
Indeed, please do that. And today, James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And we will, as usual, be taking a look at loads of your great comments, which will be filling below the videos at the end of the show. So thanks so much for that. Right, James, let's get underway. Lots to get through today. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Once again, we are honoring Sikh Heritage Month, and it is taking the world by storm. We're seeing it in the media, which is great because it seems to be getting more traction every year. As one of the purposes of this show here is that we want to see a lot more awareness about Sikh issues, culture, history, religion, and bridge that gap between communities. And I was really proud of the Attorney General in British Columbia with their public statement honoring the Sikh Heritage Month. Now, they came out and said, that's Niki Sharma, and the Attorney General said this morning, or when this release was done, that April marks Sikh Heritage Month, the time to celebrate the rich history of Sikhism. The values of Sikhism, or Sikhi, echo perfectly those that Canadians and British Columbians hold dear, from the belief that all people are created equal to understanding the importance of serving one's community. These are the beliefs that the first Sikh migrants to BC in the early 1900s brought with them, and they are what have defined the contributions that Sikhs have made to the province of British Columbia. Today, nearly 300,000 Sikhs call British Columbia home, making it one of the largest Sikh populations outside of Punjab, India. Even in the face of exclusionary policies and systemic racism, Sikhs have shown resilience and have built thriving communities. They are staunch advocates for justice, compassion, and inclusivity, especially in times of crisis. From healthcare and agriculture to business and politics, today Sikhs are leaders in all areas of British Columbia society. The challenges faced by Sikhs in BC has changed over the years. Some of the most pressing concerns right now are the anti-immigration sentiment, negative stereotyping associated with religious symbols, and systemic barriers to accessing services. Our government is committed to fighting back through investment in community-led initiatives and implementing legislation like the Anti-Racism Act. The best way we can eradicate hate and bigotry is by learning about each other's culture, highlighting our similarities, and celebrating our differences. And that's what I love about Vaisakhi, because the entire community comes out. Over 250,000 people, and sometimes even up as high as 500,000 people show up for it, depending on the weather. It is an amazing community event. Now, Sikh Heritage Month, the Attorney General goes on to encouraging all British Columbians to explore the festivities in their communities, learn about Sikh culture and traditions. Happy Sikh Heritage Month, it finishes off. And what I really liked about this is that more and more politicians and other public figures are actually finding the courage to acknowledge the challenges of the past, the disparities, the real challenges that the Sikh community has faced and how they've overcome it. They have grown to be pillars of our communities, and they have contributed so much in the development of the province of British Columbia, the country of Canada, and of course around the world. So again, just another way of honoring by the government the contributions made by the Sikh community here in British Columbia. And I just wanted to share that because I thought it was a positive message. But again, I really like to see that people acknowledge that there have been wrongs in the past and that we are working to move past those and really embrace the power and the positivity of the Sikh culture.
Yes, it's a fabulous statement, and I would say it's very typical of Canadian politicians who really do pay such genuine tribute to the enormous Sikh population in Canada. Now, of course, one cynically could say, well, there are so many Sikhs in Canada now, and I was astonished to see 300,000 Sikhs in the community in BC alone. I mean, that is an enormous size of community. But ultimately, cynically, of course, politicians recognise that and they realise, we better be nice to them because that's a large voting bloc. And of course, the lesson to learn from the community from this is, yes, you are a large voting bloc. Use it, because all these events that you do, it's again the big another key word that came out there was learning about cultures. So all these events, whether it's Vaisakhi, Sikh Heritage Month, all these sorts of things, these are huge opportunities to spread the message of what the community represents, and therefore the politicians have to take note, because of course the community is this large voting bloc. It holds a huge amount of influence in terms of Canadian politics because it is such a large community. So therefore it's certainly beholden upon every Sikh within the community to get out there, get visible, get your message across, get the issues that affect the community out there into the public domain, because of course politicians will then take note of that because they realise, yeah, we better do, because there are so many Sikhs in British Columbia and of course Canada as a whole that we need to influence policies and directions of governance to ensure that the community remains happy. So I think this statement, as wonderful as it is, there's a lot of layers to this statement, and I think it also does reflect, as I say, the importance of the Sikh community within Canada as a whole. Of course, the massive positive contribution that the community has made, but it also does show that the community now has reached a size where it is actually having a significant influence on the governance of not just British Columbia, but Canada as a whole. We saw that, of course, reflected in Justin Trudeau's stance, where Justin Trudeau was prepared to sever diplomatic ties with India because of an individual. He was technically a Canadian citizen, but ultimately he was a Sikh. And so even Trudeau was prepared to sever his nation's ties with India, diplomatically speaking, because a Sikh was murdered on Canadian soil. So I think this is all indicative of the power now that the community has in Canada, and that power should be, of course, used wisely, as it is indeed, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And we've talked in the past about, the real tragedy of people not understanding Sikhs, not understanding the culture, and mixing them up with others. I mean, you look at 9/11 and how badly they were treated afterwards, and people just totally didn't understand the difference in a lot of religions, a lot of faiths, a lot of cultures. And I think that we've come a long way since then. I think that there's still a lot of work to be done. I think that we need to really continue our work here and all of the others to just educate people and really drive home the fact that Sikhs are peaceful. They are focused on equality, on rights, and really want to help to empower others. And with that said, Angus, I'll jump into our next story, where the Sikhs continue worldwide to continue helping others and standing up for those who don't have a voice of their own or where their voices are silenced. And that comes to inmates, whether it is in ICE camps and detention centers, or if it is in prison systems. And that goes worldwide. It's not just here in Canada, it's not just in India, but the Sikhs stand up and they want to make sure that people are treated with dignity and respect, regardless as to where they happen to be. And I thought, I'd play with a bit of AI here for the image today, because I took the Satledge colors and created ourselves some Sikh superheroes, because that's what they are when they fight for prisoner rights or just helping others in need around the world. They are superheroes, and I thought this one here reflected that. They're at the bars to help the inmates in need. Now, as the world observes Sikh Heritage Month, the Sikh community's unwavering dedication to human rights, particularly concerning prisoners and the unjustly detained, comes into sharp focus. This commitment is deeply rooted in the Sikh philosophy and continues to manifest through advocacy, legal aid, and grassroots movements worldwide. Now, this is not something that is new to the Sikh community and their beliefs. The root of Sikh activism for prisoners dates back to the early 17th century, when most countries weren't even formed, let alone prisons. And that was Guru Hargobind Singh, Sahib Ji. And that was the sixth guru, who orchestrated the release of 52 innocent kings from unjust imprisonment. The act of defiant compassion is celebrated as a symbol of liberation and justice. And just so you know, there's a lot of great information. At the bottom of this article, there is, I put a link there to a great story of all places on LinkedIn that really goes through the history and about this guru. I thought was interesting. I'd share the link with you. Now, he had been released from prison but refused to leave until the 52 others were released because they were unjustly imprisoned. And before leaving the prison, he actually had a robe made with 52 tassels so that every one of those kings could hold a tassel as they exited together. And that, to me, speaks power through not just the visualization for anybody seeing them being released, but just the power of unity that he really bestowed within the group, and just really brought everybody together as equals as they left those gates. Now, modern Sikh organizations uphold this legacy through efforts around the world, including the SGPC in India, providing monthly honorariums and legal aid to long incarcerated Sikh prisoners. You've got to keep in mind for us in the Western world is that a lot of prisons around the world do not even provide the basics like soap or a mattress to sleep on or a blanket to cover yourself with at night. The conditions are deplorable, and that is why they continue to fight. Not just for the rights of those wrongfully incarcerated, but for those who may have taken a wrong path and need to find their way back to being part of the community. But the Sikh community stands tall, stands strong, and tries to give them that hand up and not a handout. Now, the Sikh Coalition in the U.S. is also working always to advocate for detained immigrants, denied religious accommodations such as turbans and vegetarian meals, among other religious and cultural items. The United Sikhs always are in the forefront as well for human rights, and they are all continually filing civil rights complaints and demanding accountability. And this is in relation specifically to the asylum seekers facing mistreatment in ICE detention, but they also look after inmates in other facilities as well. Now, Canadian advocacy by the World Sikh Organization ensures that Sikh inmates receive religious accommodations, legal aid, and post-incarceration support. They also go on to make sure that they have different other items of religious importance that they can have there, and have fought for those rights and for the rights for them to be able to have their sacred religious practices within the confines of many prisons. Now, more recently, Sikh organizations have challenged policies that have allowed immigration enforcement at places of worship, and that's something that we've talked about, especially with the most recent issues that we've seen in the news. Now, they defended the prisoners' rights to wear religious articles in jail and responded to cases like Jaspal Singh's tragic death in ICE custody. That is something that we'll touch on in just a moment. But in Canada, the World Sikh Organization also has taken on correctional facilities to ensure fair treatment and religious dignity for all Sikh inmates. And they even go further that they're not just representing the Sikh inmates, they are representing other minorities too by virtue of gaining these rights and making sure that the prison systems, in this case Correctional Services of Canada or provincial systems, respect the rights of all minorities and all inmates together. So that is a beautiful thing that they have seen a lot of success in doing. I have no doubt that they will continue on doing so. Now, these situations are not isolated. They reflect a global and enduring Sikh principle of justice for all and dignity for even the most forgotten. The Sikh Heritage Month, the community message is clear. Freedom is not only a right, it is a duty. And that is a duty that we all must recognize and honor. And there is the link there for those who want to check out that site on LinkedIn by Manjit Singh. Again, it is a beautiful, beautifully written piece. There's a picture here, and just on credit of that, it was from the wiki.org. They didn't have a credit as to who that photo or that image credit belonged to, so I just wanted to share that regardless. Now, as we continue on, I'm just going to touch briefly on the individual I spoke of earlier who died in custody of the U.S. government. And this is actually, the reason I bring this up is because today marks the 2-year anniversary of this individual's death in custody, and we still haven't seen anything more than the preliminary reports. We haven't seen an investigation. We haven't seen where things have been looked at and said, okay, we can do better this way, or just different reasons why they, I personally believe that things went wrong here and that there was a lot of failings in the system that caused this death. Now, this happened at a detention center, and this happened April 15th, 2024 was the date in which he died. However, there was a lot more to it in terms of what I think was failed to be investigated. And I'm not going to go through it all. I'm just going to kind of jump through quickly here. And essentially, on June the 30th of 2023, the United States Border Patrol transferred Mr. Singh to the custody of ICE Enforcement Removal Operations in Phoenix. They detained Mr. Singh at the Florence Staging Facility and later transferred him to Florence Services Processing Center. On July the 14th, the ICE ERO Phoenix transferred Mr. Singh to Folkston Main ICE Processing Center in Folkston, Georgia. So they jumped him around a lot. But what worries me even more is that here on July the 14th, during his initial intake screening, and they did that in Punjabi, so that was at least respectful, but he denied that he had any past medical or mental health conditions, and the registered nurse documented normal vital signs except for a mildly elevated blood pressure. The advanced practitioner provider ordered that they check Mr. Singh's blood pressure 3 times weekly for 2 weeks, and then they cleared him for general population. So we'll jump forward here. July the 21st, again, they did another exam. They recorded that all things seemed normal at that point. But between October 19th and April the 5th of 2024, there we go. I think that was my error on the years. But excuse me. He was treated and put back into regular population, but that was for pre-diabetes and an elevated blood pressure. Also urinary problems and mental health concerns. And I would say that the mental health concerns probably had to do with his raising a lot of issues about his physical health, and they just wrote it off as a mental health issue of stress, anxiety, all of that sort of thing, which I can understand being in such a facility. Now, on April the 14th, and I said 2023, it's actually 2024, so my apologies on the mix-up there. But the health staff evaluated Mr. Singh for a complaint of chest pain using a nurse's assessment protocol, performed an electrocardiogram, and they said that that was abnormal with possible inferior ischemia. Now, that is essentially a problem with a blockage, a blood clot, or an other issue that's in the lower part of the muscles of the heart. And they decided at that point that the health staff should make an appointment for the medical housing unit and then schedule an appointment with the regular practitioner or the doctor at that point, instead of actually making it a priority, which if you look at the symptoms of all of it in totality, there definitely seems to be that they missed some major warning signs that could have saved this individual's life. Now, Mr. Singh, upon prison staff and health staff, upon hearing Mr. Singh vomiting in his cell on the 15th of April 2024, not 2023, at 12:10 a.m. Now, they noted that Mr. Singh requested and was provided with medicine for gas relief and heartburn. Again, symptoms of a heart condition, given his already monitored situation for heart trouble, combined with the other issues like nausea and vomiting. This should have been a major red flag to get him medical assistance immediately, not to brush it off. Now, on the 15th of April, the health staff attended Mr. Singh upon hearing him vomit. Oh, sorry, I already put that part. So later in the day, though, about an hour later, health staff discovered that Mr. Singh was actually unconscious in his cell. He was slumped over his bed. They got the staff to open the door for the health providers. They checked him for a pulse and breathing, not present, transferred Mr. Singh from his bed to the floor, and initiated CPR and the use of an external defibrillator. Now, they went on to provide treatment as they called for EMS to transport Mr. Singh to the hospital. In short, he was pronounced deceased at the hospital. So to me, there's a lot of questions still that have not been answered. And this is a year later on the anniversary that we're calling on the United States Customs and Border Patrol, Homeland Security, and others to really come out with a report to say what happened. How did you miss this? These were textbook cases or warning signs of a much deeper health issue. He was in distress and they failed to act. And I think that is the real tragedy, that this life was lost, Angus. I don't think it should have been a matter of him being ignored, in my opinion anyway. And that's where the health system, in not just the ICE detentions, but I think that prison systems as a whole throughout the U.S. are really failing the inmates that they have been trusted to care for, Angus.
Yes, it's a tragic story, and it does actually reflect, I suppose, one of the key issues, key problems that law enforcement and the immigration authorities have. Of course, when they are enacting their policies, when they are having to enact the law to remove people from the United States, or in fact just go about just general day-to-day law enforcement. And there's been plenty of cases of them being a little bit too brutal in their actions, and of course people die or get seriously injured. And it's not just it just doesn't happen just in the US. We've certainly had cases here in the UK where law enforcement are going about their jobs, but they just cross the line just a little bit too far and people get hurt or worse. And this is again another case where this has happened. And I do feel for law enforcement. They have a very, very difficult job. And of course, they need to use physical force, sometimes to restrain, sometimes to go about their jobs. And of course, it's very hard to know exactly where that line is. And it's very difficult to use force without actually physically hurting somebody by just sheer simple definition. Unfortunately, things go wrong. And in this case, certainly things went very wrong. I think the main issue here then is of course, yes, totally. Law enforcement have a job to do, and we must support them in their job. But we must always hold them to account, because they must go about their job in a legal way, in a way that enacts the law in the most fair and just way. And this is really where the Sikh philosophy comes in. I think this is really the real story about all this. And I think, as we often say, this Sikh philosophy and the whole fundamental foundations of Sikhi are based on fairness, equality, and just the goodness of humanity. And ultimately, wherever Sikhs see the badness of humanity, let's keep it in simplistic terms, they act. They feel morally motivated to do something about it. And this is why, ultimately, the Sikh community have so many enemies, and very powerful enemies. Because, of course, those enemies are powerful forces who are trying to enact their own agenda. And, of course, by that I'm looking at India as an example, the Indian government, the ruling elite of India. But there are others globally who do not like the Sikh community because they basically stand up to these powerful forces. And these powerful forces are not not usually forces for good. They are forces for bad. And this is why they hate the Sikh community, because the Sikh community are one of the very few communities around the world that will actually stand up, literally risking their lives to stand up against that sort of unjust and inhumane behaviour. And so, of course, then that is why people from these powerful organisations turn against the Sikh community, and they use their power to turn the media or other narratives or other platforms against the Sikh community. But this does not deter the Sikh community, because, as I said, they are fundamentally driven by the simple goodness of humanity and the basic foundations of Sikhi. So it is no surprise then that regularly in the media, and I see certainly on a daily basis, the Sikh community are in the news because they are forming that vanguard against the abuse of human rights, whether it is in India. But it's not just in India, it's also outside India. You only need to look on a daily basis at the Sikh Coalition's website, for example, where they are on an almost daily basis campaigning not just for Sikh rights, but for other people's rights, prisoners' rights. There's a case going on at the moment where, for example, under the ICE legislation in the United States, Trump, I believe, has deported a guy from Maryland. He's not a Sikh, he's just a US citizen from Maryland. He's been captured up in this ICE removal from the United States, and the guy from Maryland's been shipped out. So I think it's to Ecuador, to that awful prison in Ecuador. He was it turns out wrongly accused of being a gang member, and he's been shipped out to Ecuador, to that frightening prison in Ecuador. But of course, the Sikh Coalition say, no, this guy is not a gang member. We must stand up for his human rights. He's not a Sikh, but this again is very typical of what the Sikh community do. They stand up for human rights, whosever human rights it is, whether it's in Bangladesh, whether it's in the United States, or whether it's in India, or whether it's in Southeast Asia. It doesn't matter. They follow their principles, and this is why so many Sikhs do find themselves at the receiving end of so much hatred and damnation from these powerful organisations or these powerful governments. And again, the Indian government is a prime example of this, is because they are one of the very few parts of human society who will stand up publicly, even at great risk, to call out and hold accountable these regimes that abuse human rights, James. So it is no surprise to me, this. And one final thing, just to wrap this up. You started your report, James, talking about, you had that wonderful AI picture of Sikh superheroes. Well, let me remind my audience, this did remind me of a story I did a couple of years ago or so. There is, I think it's in Leicester here in the UK, anyway, somewhere here in the UK, there is a guy in the Sikh community who has produced Sikh superhero action figures, and you can view these. I had a quick Google actually whilst you were talking, James, and the Khalsa Toy Store, the KhalsaToyStore.com. Let me give these guys a shout out. The KhalsaToyStore.com sells a set of 6 superhero Sikh superheroes. So get yourself along to that. They do ship worldwide, and well, maybe if the guys watching, you can send us a few figures. We'll give you a really public shout out. But there you go. There are Sikh superhero action figures that you can buy. They do exist, and this came, I think, because the chap involved, I think his own children said, look, why don't we have any Sikh superheroes? We've got all these action figures. We've got these Marvel figures. Why aren't there any Sikhs? So he said, yeah, why aren't there any? So he made some, and apparently they proved very popular. So get yourself along to that store and get yourself some of those action figures for your own children, James. But there you go. There are Sikh superhero action figures.
Absolutely, Angus. I recall that story well. It was a great one. And it's great that you remembered that, because it's such an important thing. I think children need to see just those positive things within their community. And, so many of the action heroes, so many of the different things out there are focused on Caucasians, and that is really alienating a lot of the other customers. But it also doesn't give that equality to children when they're thinking about their future. And they're not going to grow up to be superheroes directly, but I mean, look at all the superheroes in the Sikh community who are just fighting for others, and that's amazing, Angus.
Indeed, indeed. Right, let's change subjects completely. Let's stay in the UK, and we'll go on to British politics once again. The story that I always end up ranting about, and of course it is the British government and its treatment of Sikhs. Well, we had, of course, the celebrations of Vaisakhi, a lot of celebrations right around the country in our major cities, the Vaisakhi processions, etc. Well, of course, it is beholden usually upon the British Prime Minister on occasions like this to pay tribute publicly to our various minority communities here in the UK. And the British government does do this on a regular basis. And UK Prime Minister did actually, and I'll show you the video in a moment, he did actually make a statement. But of course, he has been publicly, prior to this, Starmer was called on publicly to apologise for an occasion, a terrible event that happened on Vaisakhi in 1919. This was, of course, the Jallianwallagh Bagh massacre. This was a dreadful situation in India that happened, of course, under the British Raj. And the British Army fired upon Sikh, Punjabi protesters. They weren't all Sikhs, but the vast majority of people in attendance were Sikhs. And it was a terrible massacre that occurred. It was General Dyer of the British Army had bottled up a few thousand Punjabis in a square in the town of Jallianwallagh Bagh. And these protesters were protesting peacefully about something called the Rowlatt Act at the time. I'll try and dredge up my memories of the story of this, but basically it was the Rowlatt Act, which was an act brought in by the British government at the time in India that was designed to suppress basic human rights, because they were afraid that there was a bit of an uprising going on. So they instituted a bit of legislation that rather reflects current Indian governance, interestingly. But they brought in this act, the Rowlatt Act. And of course, the Punjabis rose up, as they always have done in the past, to say, no, this is not fair, this is unjust, you cannot restrict our human rights like this. So they gathered in the square in Jallianwallagh Bagh. General Dyer mobilised British troops. He bottled them up, he blocked the one entrance, and he ordered his troops to open fire on the peaceful protesters. Now, the amount of innocent protesters who were murdered in that massacre varies. Anything between, I think, 370 up to 1,500 were claimed to have been massacred. The numbers are not certain. What we do know is that children were amongst those who were murdered, and hundreds basically were killed in basic cold blood. And it has formed a complete stain on the British Empire. It is an absolute shame, a shameful part of British history in India. And it is beholden upon the British government, and certainly the British nation, to apologise formally for this. And governments in the past have been called upon this. But what's different about Keir Starmer's government is that he actually made a promise prior to being elected to apologise for this. So, of course, there has been, leading up to this year's Vaisakhi, of course, the pressure has increased once again from organisations like the Sikh Federation UK, plus 400 other Sikh organisations who signed a letter pressing Starmer's government to launch, first of all, a 1984 inquiry, another promise that he made, which is promised, but also primarily to apologise for this Jallianwallagh Bagh massacre. And in the Sikh Siyasat News website, they also, a few days ago, they published an article, again, covering this story, and they said, look, as we approach the 106th anniversary of the Jallianwallagh Bagh massacre on the 13th of April, eyes are on Keir Starmer to see if he commits in his Vaisakhi message on the 14th of April to make a formal apology for the massacre when Parliament returns on the 22nd of April. And, well, let me show you. I'll play for you now. This is Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister's statement on Vaisakhi.
It's really fantastic to be able to come together and to celebrate the contribution of British Sikhs to our nation. And what a contribution that is and has been and will be into the future. But we've also got leaders in this room from across our society, from our armed forces, those who contribute to our schools, to our NHS, to charities, and of course to businesses. And if you think about it, throughout our history, from fighting for Britain in the world wars, and today your work supporting people who are struggling with the cost of living, or welcoming refugees from Ukraine, the generosity of Gurdwaras across Britain. And I'm always very humbled when I see that work, that care, that beacon of light in our communities. a visible sign of the values of Sikhism, of compassion and courage, but also of service or savour. And that's particularly important to me. This government will always stand with you, proud of our strong multicultural society and against bigotry. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, all very nice and all, but it's just words. It's all meaningless sort of epithets. It's, to me, I think if you caught Starmer off guard and said, what does the Sikh community represent, he probably wouldn't be able to answer you. I think somebody wrote that speech for him, and it was all just platitudes. But I'm not surprised. It's just typical of actually any prevailing British government, to be frank. So ultimately, that's it. But what really matters there is, of course, there is no apology for Jallianwallagh Bagh. And as a response, the Sikh Federation UK, they did make a statement after this, and their lead exec, Jaspal Singh, he said, Keir Starmer at the Vaisakhi reception remained silent on the massacre, despite a number of MPs reminding him in recent weeks of Labour's promise following the 100th anniversary in 2019 that an incoming Labour PM would make a formal apology. Well, there you go. Officials at 10 Downing Street demonstrated they remain uneasy about proper engagement with the Sikh community. Many of those they chose to invite to Downing Street, that's the home of the British Prime Minister, on Tuesday's reception were linked to Labour. Sikh MPs, non-Sikh MPs with large Sikh constituencies, Labour councillors, Sikh public sector workers, civil servants, military, police, etc. MPs invited were told they could nominate one person from their constituency involved in charity work. However, there were only 4 or 5 Gurdwara representatives from over 240 Gurdwaras. There were no invitations to mainstream Sikh organisations. So again, it's pretty damning for the Labour government. Again, lots of promises, no delivery. And we look back on previous Prime Ministers. For example, David Cameron, the Conservative Prime Minister, he said in 2013, when he actually became the first serving UK Prime Minister to pay his respects at the scene of the massacre in Amritsar. He described it as a deeply shameful event in British history. And then he wrote in the condolence book, "We must never forget what happened here." But he still refused to offer a formal apology. On the 100th anniversary, Theresa May, who was British Prime Minister at the time, was challenged by the Labour leadership in Parliament to make a full and clear, unequivocal apology. So this is Labour saying, you must apologise on behalf of Britain. So Labour demanded in 2019 that the Conservative government apologise. And similar to previous Prime Ministers, Theresa May expressed deep regret, described the massacre as a shameful scar, but this fell short of a formal apology. And she repeated the words of regret at the same Vaisakhi reception in 2019. And notably, the Labour manifesto for the last general election in 2019 stated, "We will issue a formal apology for the Jallianwallagh Bagh massacre and hold a public review into Britain's role in the Amritsar massacre in June 1984. And yet, here we are, 2025, the British Labour government, who have promised in their manifesto to apologise for the Jallianwallagh Bagh massacre, have not done. Who promised to deliver an inquiry, an investigation, a judge-led inquiry into the events of June 1984, and still not delivered. Promises made during electioneering, promises not delivered now they're in government. Who's surprised? I'm certainly not surprised, James. It is not a surprise at all. And again, it is just unbelievable that the British government, whether it is Labour or Conservative, will not issue a formal apology. Why not? What does it take to issue a formal apology? I mean, I, as a British citizen, am very proud of the British Empire. It did an awful lot of force for good around the world, but it did some shameful things. And I think it is absolutely beholden on the British government, on behalf of the British nation, to apologise for this massacre. This massacre was a shameful scar, in Theresa May's words. It was a shameful scar on British history, and we should apologise for it. We owe that, at least, to the people of the Punjab. Why does the the British government not do it? I don't know, and I'll be very curious to know why. Because it doesn't take a lot to make a formal apology. It is very significant in terms of making amends for what the British Empire did wrong in that time. But to me, James, I'm not surprised. It's once again British politicians, like politicians the world over. It's very easy for them to make promises. It's very difficult, it seems, for them to deliver on those promises.
Absolutely, and it's no different in Canada, to the point that we always see a lot of broken promises by politicians. And I think that that's going to play very loudly in the upcoming election in a few weeks here. And, not just in the Sikh community, but I think with minorities all across the board in terms of previous records. And, you have a great history of the Liberal Party standing up for minorities, the NDPs, but when it comes to Conservatives, what exactly is their agenda that they are speaking versus what their actions have been in the past to prove what we can look forward to in the future if they were to be in office. And I don't think that'll happen, but I'm just saying if.
Indeed. It frankly baffles me why the British government just won't apologise for this. I mean, I as a British citizen, I can't apologise for my ancestors' actions. It is up to our government, who represent effectively our ancestors and Britain as a nation. It is only them who can issue this apology on all our behalf, because I have absolutely no doubt that the vast majority of people in this country, in the United Kingdom, would be happy to issue a formal apology to the people of Punjab for that massacre. So why doesn't the government do it? Again, it all comes back to why, what is going on with the British establishment and its relationship with India. I don't know, James. It's something that I've tried to dig deep for so long and still come up with no answers. But anyway, there you go. So all I would say to the British Sikh community is keep the pressure on, keep at it, because one day, who knows, maybe this Labour government may actually deliver on at least one promise that they made. That would certainly be a turn up for the books. Anyway, let's move on, James, and I'm going to move on to my second story. And this is a bit of a ridiculous story, but I brought this story up because it does highlight a few sort of modern issues of modern Britain, and it's quite an interesting talking point. It actually happened in a county here in the UK called Cheshire. In sort of the middle of the UK, and it's a story, and it's a story that hit a lot of the local headlines around that region here in the UK, and lots of clickbait headlines, lots of sort of alarming headlines were raised about this story, and I've picked one particular news outlet that covered it, a local one. And they reported that a parent is calling for a change in legislation after being unsettled by an incident at her son's school where a member of staff was seen wearing a kirpan. Now, this lady was taken aback, apparently, when the school informed her about a pupil citing the staff member with a ceremonial sword. Now, this lady contends that such a ceremonial sword does not belong in a school environment. The 42-year-old has since launched an online petition, gathering support from numerous signatories. And she said, at the minute, knife crime is a very big issue, so for kids to be unexpectedly exposed to things like this seems inappropriate in a school. I didn't know that wearing these items is allowed in a school setting. And she said, in her defence, I don't want people to get the wrong idea. I've got lots of respect for Sikhs and other communities. Well, clearly she doesn't. I'm just concerned as a parent that kids could be getting scared or getting the wrong idea. I know lots of other parents agree with me too. This is Mrs. Angry, and I must resist the temptation to mock this poor lady because she clearly feels passionately about this. And she further explained, the potential impact on children. Think of how that could look to a child who doesn't know better. It looks like a concealed weapon. They spotted it unexpectedly without any warning. It must have been terrifying for them. It was for me. I would have been terrified myself. Now, UK law does state that kirpans and other forms of religious dress are allowed within school grounds, so it was perfectly legal. And it was said, she said, it's the law, so I know I haven't got a leg to stand on when I argue my case, but that's why I've started this petition to try to change it. I'd like parents to be aware. The school itself said, we endeavour to work closely with our school community to support religious practices as much as possible. We very much understand that wearing the kirpan is an important part of the Sikh religion and it is protected under the Equality Act of 2010. So now this story did the rounds of the local press. It hit the headlines, and as I say, it's very easy to mock this lady, but clearly she felt quite aggrieved by the situation. Now, the Sikh Press Association, they themselves, actually on behalf of the community, did issue a public statement about this story. And it's actually, the story actually happened several weeks ago. It was a bit of an old story, but it sort of came back recently as more outlets picked up on it. And the Sikh Press Association here in the UK said, they called it a non-story about this one person's discriminatory view towards Sikh practice. And it was based on one parent at a school in Cheshire who saw this staff member wearing the kirpan. It was only in view when the staff member was leaning forward. So actually it was hidden away. It was only when the teacher leant forward that it actually became visible. And this lady decided to start this petition against Sikhs wearing the kirpan, which of course is part of their articles of faith. Now, based on decades of media experience, the Sikh Press Association cite the following as reasons that this is a complete non-story. First of all, the story is nearly 5 weeks old, so it's an old story. It hit the headlines briefly and then disappeared. It was only one person, there was only one parent who came forward with this issue, indicating that many more parents, basically all the other parents, actually didn't have a problem with it. Now, she launched this petition under this great massive anger and saying, I'm sure loads of people you will agree with me, this is totally out of order. Turns out just 50 people signed the petition, and this was actually even after the petition reached national media, so it was covered around the UK, yet only 50 people signed it. And the kirpan has been legally worn in schools by teachers and pupils in the UK for decades without incident. And the Sikh Press Association did say, look, the only reason to publish such a story, which is far outside the realms of useful journalism, is to capitalise on anti-minority sentiment, despite the danger it's posing to all Sikhs here in the UK. The kirpan is, of course, an integral part of the Sikh identity, and it has become admired by the British public. One bigoted view against that should not prompt widespread media coverage. And the Sikh PA note these articles as sensationalist anti-Sikh rage baiting and demand better standards of reporting in British media. So a very strong riposte from the Sikh Press Association, unsurprisingly. But what I would say, and my own perspective on this story, is it's very easy to turn against this lady, and I almost sort of repeated her statements in a more almost derogatory manner. But actually, we must understand where this lady's coming from. First of all, this actually reflects a real serious problem we have here in the UK. We have a massive problem of knife crime. Knife crime is running rampant across British cities. Children are being stabbed and murdered by other children with knives, kitchen knives, all the way up to these what they call zombie knives. These knives that are literally 16 inches long, they're like swords. So of course we do have a massive problem here in the UK, and it's usually related to gang problems. And minorities are disproportionately involved in knife crime, particularly in London. It is running endemic. So it is unsurprising then that members of the public are particularly concerned. And this is where actually this story really comes from. It is a parent who has been so indoctrinated is the wrong word. I would say who's been so... who's seen so much media coverage of this endemic knife crime here in the UK, that of course this has rubbed up against religious practices. Of course, Sikhs have the legal right here in the UK and of course across the West to wear their kirpan. It is an article of faith. It is not a concealed weapon. It is an article of faith. And again, we've reported on so many stories where this same problem, where the articles of faith have rubbed up against criminality and accusations of criminality. It is of course not criminal to wear the kirpan. It is the right of a Sikh to wear their kirpan anywhere, in public or in private or wherever. But of course, this parent who's been so inured by media coverage of knife crime that, of course, this talk of, there was a teacher wearing a sword or wearing a machete or wearing a knife. No, it wasn't. It was a kirpan. And unfortunately, that is where this story's come from. So what I would say, and again, this always comes back, James, to what we always talk about, this is all about education. If this parent understood and knew really what the Sikh faith was all about, if they knew what the Kirpan was represented, and it is not a concealed weapon that will be used in any form of criminality, it is simply an article of faith representing a Sikh person's faith, then I have no doubt that she would say, I get it, I understand, I apologise, I understand it is not a threat. It is not a threat or terrifying to the children. And again, the children would be educated, as indeed they are here in the UK. The children are educated as part of our school curriculum about articles of faith of Sikh and about the Kirpan. So in fact, she is wrong in that respect, in that the children will have been educated about what the Kirpan represented. Unfortunately, she's just taken it a little step too far, and it's created actually what all in all is a bit of a non-story. But in this non-story, it does highlight once again this issue that we are seeing the world round now, is that the Kirpan is rubbing up against people who are scared of criminality, and this is why people need to be educated about what the Kirpan is and ultimately what the Sikh faith represents, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And it reminds me of the story we just did last week or a couple of weeks ago about Bill 21 in Canada. And, it's about the protection of the religious articles. And in Quebec, they have that law that passed, Bill 21, where people cannot visibly wear items of religion, and that goes for all religions. You can't wear a cross in the classroom or in public facilities where you are working, whether that's a kirpan, whether it's a turban, whether it's this, whether it's that, and that's something that's being fought through the court systems in Canada right now. But again, it is just the oversensitization that people are just getting. They want to bitch about anything, and they want to feel like they have a voice and they're almighty. And it's like, come on, get off your ass and go make change in the world that's going to make a significant betterment for society, and stop picking on things that are non-issues like this response said. It's a non-issue. Get over it. Go do something that's actually going to make your community better, stronger, and have a better future for your children. And that's my opinion on it. And it's just, we see the same issue of ignorance and bigotry in Canada and elsewhere. So we've got to better educate. And if anything positive comes out of this, hopefully it is that people learn more about the Kirpan as well as other religions and groups of faith.
Absolutely right, James. All about education, as we say on a very regular basis. Right, on that note, James, let's move on to our comments.
Before you get into comments there, Angus, if I can steal the share screen for a minute.
Absolutely, go for it.
There we go. I just pulled something up for you because you did such a great job with that. I just wanted to give a quick pull up here. There we go. So yeah, there you go, Angus. I just pulled that up while you were doing your first story there, so that people could actually see where some of the toys, and it's at the closest store, toystore.com. So yeah, I just wanted to pull that up for you so they could see. I just thought it was great.
There it is. Great stuff, James. Thanks for that. Indeed. So get yourself along to the closest toy store. Not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. All for the benefit of our wonderful audience. And talking about our wonderful audience, right. Yes, let's move on to our comments section. And NSL is going to start us off today with, from my understanding and observations, there is too much politics in the Gurdwaras. Yes, absolutely right. This is the problem. But of course, it does rub up against the whole idea, though, that the Sikh religion is almost inextricably linked to politics because of its very nature, and of course its very history that it's had to fight through for so many centuries to fight for its own survival. And I think that is probably why politics is so heavily involved in Gurdwaras. Now the problem, of course, then is that it has allowed let's say bad actors to enter Gurdwaras, particularly in the Punjab. We talk about this regularly. Is that all the religious organisations in the Punjab, the Sikh organisations, whether it's SGPC or whether it's the Akal Takht, have been infiltrated heavily by bad actors, and of course by that I mean the RSS, and of course they are stirring too much problem, or stirring all sorts of problems across Punjabi religious organisations, but it seems to be spreading to other Gurdwaras across the West. Unfortunately, it's human nature as well. It is likely within Gurdwaras that always have some form of hierarchy. Wherever there's a hierarchy, it does tend to attract politics, whether it's in the office, whether it's in society, whether it's in the Gurdwara. Sadly, politics does always seem to enter the equation. But I think you're absolutely right, NSL. There maybe is too much politics in the Gurdwaras, James.
And I think that that's any house of worship, or as you said, anywhere else, whether it's business, whether it's government. Politics is a part of our everyday society, no matter where you go.
Indeed. And Gurvinder Sond says, look, the Indian state is cruel. It's a dictatorship. It's unsafe for the whole of humanity, not just their own citizens. It's their ill mentality and cowardice, or nature of cowardice, is the root cause. Well, I actually would, the only bit about that I would disagree with Gurvinder is actually, I don't think cowardice is the root cause. I think the root cause is simple human nature. It is the Brahmin elite. It is the Brahmin controlling elite of India that is the root cause. It is their human nature to desire to dominate and control the whole of India. They have been in control of India for a very long time, and they want to maintain that control. And I think their acts against, whether it's the Sikh community or whether it's all the other minority communities, or even against their own Hindu lower caste demographic, they enact their whole unpleasant agenda, let's put it euphemistically. They go about their day-to-day agenda because they just want to maintain control over their other citizens. It's part of their human nature. Cowardice may be part of it, but ultimately it is all about the Brahmin control of India. I think that's really is what is behind most of these evil acts that we see coming out of India, James.
Absolutely. And I think that it's important, like you said, to really focus that towards where it's coming from, the Brahmins and others. And just remember that there are, whether or not it's in the Gurdwaras, whether or not it's in the politics, no matter what, there are people that are there for the right reasons. And a lot of times their voices are quelled. They are suppressed. So we need to remember that even though we see a lot of negativity, that there is some positive light there. And that's what we have to fight for, to make or allow the light to shine through, Angus.
Absolutely, and it's what I call my 1 in 10 theory. If you take 10 average human beings, put them in a room, one of those 10 will want to is genetically driven to want to control the other 9 in that room, and you can scale that up from whether it's a school classroom all the way up to governments or just society, whether it's a golf club or an office. There are always that 1 in 10 who are genetically driven to want to control the rest of that group, and ultimately, I think that is who the Brahmins represent. They are that 1 in 10 scaled up across India, and that really is, it's just human nature. It's evolution. It's created by nature. But anyway, that's another rabbit hole we won't go down. Suftu Muffins says Indian government is destroying jungles in Hyderabad. Well, thank you for this comment. And I did actually look up what this was all about. Well, it turns out that the Supreme Court just a few days ago directed the Telangana government to stop what it calls its alarming deforestation activities in the Kancha Gachibowli forested area. Now, this came after the government in Telangana announced in February to auction 400 acres of forested land adjacent to the University of Hyderabad to build IT parks. And of course, that led to all sorts of protests about it. Now, this area is one of Hyderabad's last remaining urban forests. It's rich in biodiversity. It's home to numerous birds, mammals, reptile species, and of course, beautiful rock formations. Now, for the government, the forest lies here, and here's really what it's all about. The forest lies bang in the middle of Hyderabad's financial district. Auctioning the land would not only fill government coffers, but also attract potential investments of large scales, generate large amounts of jobs, the government says, and notably the Gachibowli IT corridor is one of the most expensive localities in Hyderabad, boasting extremely high property rates. So yes, Suftu Muffins, thank you for highlighting this. What this is all about, this is all about the Indian government realising that this area, these 400 acres, are sitting on some of the the most valuable land in Hyderabad. So why should we dedicate it to nature? Why should we let it allow citizens to breathe, providing a little bit of fresh air? No, it's worth more in dollars, or rupees in reality. And clearly the Telangana government have been allowed by the central government in Delhi, yes, sell off this land because it's too valuable. James, once again, this is all about dollars, more important than anything else.
We see this in Vancouver because we're pinched between mountains and the ocean and rivers, where a lot of the building is going up, and it's a fine balance between looking after the protected areas of our forests as opposed to trying to find more space for housing and other projects. So yeah, I get it. Indeed.
It's a problem the world over, I have no doubt. Critics Corner, James. I'm delighted Critics Corner has made a brief return. So welcome to Nearbang. Thank you, Nearbang, for your contributions. And you said, rather cynically, did you celebrate the killing of Indira Gandhi with all fun? And you then followed that up with saying, and the killing of Hindus in Kanishka, that's the Air India bombing in Canada, or other such wonderful events. Well, no, Nearbang. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, of course, nobody celebrated the killing of it. Well, a few people did celebrate the killing of Indira Gandhi, but you have to see what that was in the context of about. You seem to have brushed over the fact of why Indira Gandhi was assassinated. She was assassinated for her instructing Operation Blue Star, which massacred several thousand innocent men, women and children in Amritsar at the Harmandir Sahib. That's why Indira Gandhi was assassinated, and for other reasons as well. I only need to point you to Operation Shanti, and if you don't know what Operation Shanti is, please Google it or watch some of our podcasts where I explain and highlight just the evils of Indira Gandhi, the dreadful actions she took against the Sikh community and planned to take against the Sikh community. So you also tend to brush over the Sikh genocide, in which again tens of thousands of Sikhs, innocent men, women and children were tortured and murdered in the most horrific manner after her assassination. So Nearbang, unfortunately, I really need to tell you, look at Indira Gandhi's assassination in the context of what she was responsible for, and that might at least help you understand why people are so anti-Indira Gandhi. And then the killing of Hindus in the Air India bombing. Well, that's an interesting one that you point that, because James and I regularly talk about the Air India bombing, and we join the community in demanding that there is an investigation into the Air India bombing, that the investigation is reopened, because as it turns out, the bombing was blamed on the Sikh community, but ultimately there is an awful lot of evidence that has since come out, particularly in the context of modern transnational repression, that actually the Indian Secret Intelligence Agency, RAW, were behind that actual bombing. In other words, the Hindus themselves were behind the bombing of that aircraft, not the Sikh community, James. So unfortunately, Nearbang, I think, needs to do a little bit more reading and research about what we're talking about.
Absolutely, Angus. And again, we don't condone the violence against any individual or any political figure. We condemn all of that. But at the same time, we also try to bring a truth to what has happened in history. And as you said, even when it comes to the Air India bombing, I not celebrated, but I went and honored the victims of that at the last memorial here in Vancouver, and it is something that is deeply entrenched into our community and something that we don't forget. And we would love to see another inquiry open to get to the truth of it.
And funnily enough, I think the message to Nearbang is, look, we're on your side, believe it or not. We actually are on the same side. We, all of us, are trying to fight against evil and people who are making life miserable for others. So essentially, I have no doubt that we are aligned on that, and that includes the persecution of Hindus, because there are hundreds of millions of Hindus in India who are persecuted under the caste system, and I'm sure Nearbang would agree with us that that in itself is evil. So we're all fighting the same common enemy. All I would say to you, Nearbang, is thank you for your comments, but please do a little bit more research in that ultimately we are probably fighting the same fight, believe it or not. And Ashley Kandar, I'm delighted to see the return of Ashley Kandar, who hasn't been on our comments column for a long time. So welcome back, Ashley. Thank you for your comment, your contribution. And you comment to say that Sikhs have all the top positions in Amritsar, But what are they doing for the scheduled caste and other religions? Well, good question. Yes, you got it right. Absolutely nothing. Go and see it for yourselves. You don't pay, then you get nothing. I think it's all about the corruptions. If you don't pay, you get nothing, even for simple paperwork. I think what you're purporting to here, Ashley, is that, yeah, there are many Sikhs who do have positions of power in Amritsar, but they are clearly not practicing what they're preaching, or they are betraying their fundamental Sikhi principles in that they are not actually representing those minorities who they should be representing. And I think maybe this is a valid criticism. I don't know. Maybe there's someone in our audience who can comment accordingly from the Punjab. Ultimately, all I would say again is human nature. It's the 1 in 10s again. The Sikh community is not immune to the 1 in 10 syndrome, in that I have no doubt there will be members of the Sikh community who are probably driven by, I would say, slightly lesser, higher moral principles than others in the community, and they're probably guilty of such acts that you're talking about, Ashley. So ultimately, not everybody's perfect, James.
Absolutely, and power can be a very powerful motivator for some, and it can corrupt others. So again, it doesn't just focus in on these individuals, but I think in the world as a whole, Angus.
Indeed, and I think Ash is right to point this out, as indeed we must be pointed to point it out publicly. Yeah, if there are those in the community who are not living by their principles, then they must, of course, have the finger pointed at them, saying, hang on, you're a Sikh, you should live by your Sikhi principles. So I think ultimately, thank you, Ashley, for pointing that out. And if that is the case, it's up to the community to point the finger at those within their same community who are not acting according to the community's principles.
That's right.
Right, James, here's a couple of comments for you after your recent visit to the Gurdwara and your reference to smoking. First of all, Inderjeet says, please use this opportunity and quit smoking for good. Absolutely right. And I will join Inderjeet in that, James, and publicly admonish you and say, you know it's not good for you, James.
Yes, I understand. And everybody tells me quit smoking, you're going to get get lung cancer, but everybody in my family dies of colon cancer. I got a bigger risk of Trump blowing smoke up my ass, so.
Well, indeed.
But yes,
indeed.
You are absolutely correct in that statement.
Absolutely. And actually, I have to, again, pay tribute to the principles of Sikhi, because, of course, alcohol, drugs, and, of course, tobacco is banned under Sikhi, which, again, just highlights the fact that it is a religion that is based not just on religious principles, but common sense. I mean, of course, we know these drugs are not good for us. And all the way back down to the first guru, it's bad for you, so why would you do it to yourself? I'm not preaching to you, James. I'm just saying that as a general observation. It is actually, it does stand in simple
So is marriage, Angus, but we still keep going back for more.
Absolutely right. And Free Spirit actually joins in the discussion specifically about your visit to the Gurdwara, James, because Free Spirit says, actually, if you don't, you're not supposed to carry cigarettes or tobacco products on you when you enter the Gurdwara, and if you do that, it doesn't cause a problem. Because Free Spirit recently, lucky you, visited the Harmandir Sahib in Amritsar itself, and there were a large number of non-Sikhs, and you presume they were Hindus. And the only question that the Sevadars at the entry point were asking is, were they carrying any cigarettes or tobacco products on their person, and letting them know if they were carrying those items, they're not allowed to take them inside the premises. So I didn't know that, James, but there you go, yeah. So officially, even in the Harmandir Sahib, you must not carry tobacco products inside the premises.
There you go, we learned something new.
So thank you, Free Spirit, for that clarification. Now we know. And the final set of comments, and a lot of it celebrating Vaisakhi. Free Spirit again started us off with saying, good to see you back. Hope you enjoyed playing hooky for a bit. Well, I would say it wasn't actually quite hooky. It was actually domestic issues that we had to sort out. It was unfortunately not much of a holiday. It was actually just sorting out some domestic issues. But thank you, we are back and glad to be back. So thank you.
And not domestic between us.
Yes, actually, yes. It was domestic on my side, just to add to that. So. And yes, we did. We had lots and lots of happy Vaisakhi comments in the comments, and I just took a few select ones from Harpal Singh, who spread the love to the world over. Great congratulations to all human beings in the whole world. I don't think you can get more generous than that. And SSKK said, James and Angus, a big thank you. Happy Vaisakhi to you both. Great work. Well, thank you, SSKK, and to all our audience. A massive happy Vaisakhi, James.
Absolutely. And tomorrow night I'll bring some clips from previous Vaisakhi parades in in Surrey to get everybody excited for this weekend's festivities.
And Hander Video says, you guys are doing an excellent job. Well, thank you very much. You watch the show every day. The knowledge you guys give to other people all over the world. Thanks. Well, absolutely. As we keep saying, we can't do this show without you guys and our audience. So please do keep these comments coming in. We do indulge ourselves a little bit on the final page of comments, just on the nice comments. But do please send us the really interesting comments, the informative comments, because we get so many really interesting comments that do actually provoke us to go research some of these stories, which always make fascinating reading for James and myself, but also hopefully it allows us to then spread the message to our audience and those who watch us about things that even they may not know about, even amongst the community. So yeah, we are very respectful and very appreciative of our audience. It's you guys who make this show possible. So and again, the key word here is all about education. It's educating me and James. We're learning so much about the Sikh community, but ultimately it helps us in our educational journey to educate our audience, and particularly those outside the Sikh community, James. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And speaking of the part where we talk about, or where you mentioned all over the world, we just want to remind people, put down in the comments where you are watching us from. We love to know, but it also gives us a little kick in the ass once in a while to remind us to cover some stories from your region as well, because sometimes we get stuck on the Western in the UK or Canada or the US. So yeah, let us know, because we want to make sure that we are covering stories important to you wherever in the world you are.
Absolutely. And Balbir Kaur finishes up by saying, keep up the good work. Well, thank you, and a happy Vaisakhi to you. This is a great program. Well, thank you very much. With all your hard work you guys put into it. Well, actually, yes, Balbir, you're absolutely right. There is an awful lot of hard work, I have to say, on a daily basis that goes into putting the show together and getting it uploaded onto the various platforms. But as I did say earlier, it is thanks to you guys in the audience. It is you guys who make this show possible. It's your input that provides us with so much information and helps us shape the show and get it back out to you. It is this iterative process, as we call it. It's you guys putting in information and support that allows us to send it back out to you guys in that iterative flow, James. So, as I said, a huge tribute to our audience.
Yeah, and thanks to the audience for that. We just love having you as a part of the show.
Indeed, and on that very happy note, we will wrap up Perspectives for another day. But please don't forget to keep those comments coming in. Appreciated as always. But don't forget, you can, of course, message us directly through the email system at message@satledgetv.com, as many of you has done. Thank you for your emails that's been coming in with some really interesting news items, pointing us in interesting directions. Send us some links if you've got anything you'd like us to talk about. But that is it for another day. Thanks so much for watching. You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.